So I want to just quickly, our format for this evening, I'm going to moderate, but we've got speakers up here. They've each got presentations and information to share. They represent different facets of the homeschooling community here in Colorado Springs. So we're going to do about 10 minutes of conversation and presentation from each of them. And then on the way in, you may have noticed that we've got some tables set up with information out there. We have some additional resources from organizations that aren't necessarily up here on stage, folks that are here joining us in the audience and or that have sent stuff literally from across the country. So we'll talk more about that. But we've got some great resources available for people to go home with. And I do want to mention that this is a backed by popular demand symposium. We actually did one of these back in December and had great response and lots of inquiries, and so that's why we're back here again. So feel free to ask questions, feel free to stick around with us afterwards and move with us from there. So I'd like to start and introduce our first speaker for this evening, who is Elizabeth Lupia, happens to be related. And she's going to share with us a little bit from the perspective of a parent testimonial. We homeschooled our kids. Our children are both now college graduates and are moving on with their lives. But she's going to share some of our testimony, and we're going to get specific to some of the resources that we used and some of the people that we introduced. So, Elizabeth.
Hello, thank you for coming tonight. Very excited to see all of you. I wanted to let you know a little bit about what we went through as a parent testimony, and I know that it's probably much of what you are feeling. I want you to know that you're not alone. This is an incredible journey. And one thing we call in our family, we say it's a POTA, A-P-O-T-A. When you're on a journey, and things happen, and you run into walls, or you go down a different path that's not expected, it's all part of the adventure, A-P-O-T-A. So when something goofy happens in our family, we go, it's a POTA. So just remember, this is an adventure, and it's an incredible adventure. It's a journey, and something that's going to make a huge change and impact in your lives, your children's lives, and how you are as a family. So I hope you're really excited about what God has for you. In 2007, God had planted a seed to homeschool. And so I looked it up. I had friends who were homeschooling. I looked on the internet. I was so overwhelmed by the options. I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of put it on a back burner and thought, I don't have to really deal with that. Until a year later, in 2008, things were chaotic. They were crazy. Nothing was working. And I said, we need to homeschool. We had been through private school, public school, charter school. It didn't matter. It wasn't working. Our kids were being bullied by kids and teachers. We had major stress in the morning. They'd go to school all day. They'd have after-school activities. And then at dinner, we had to deprogram them every single day. We were awed by what they were being taught in school. And we couldn't believe the agenda that was out there. We just weren't aware. Even though we were involved in the schools and we were volunteering in the classrooms, it was just crazy the stuff that they would come home with, and we would just have to deprogram them. Homework was a stress and lots of fights over that. And then we started all over the next day. So, as I mentioned, in 2008, we started homeschooling. But prior to homeschooling, I had been attending High Country Home Educators, their support group, their mom's group. Peter's one of the dads. And just trying to see where we needed to go and what we needed to do. So when I was asked by my mentor why we weren't homeschooling, I said, I'm not ready. And she said, what do you mean you're not ready? I said, well, I don't have my room set up. I don't have my maps on the wall. I don't have my curriculum and my little books and everything in order. She just started laughing. She said, oh, you're going to school home. And I said, wait, what? She said, you're not going to homeschool then. And I said, what? I think I'm missing something. So she laughed out of love with me, and she said, that's not homeschooling. She said, don't replicate what's in the public school or what you've been doing in public, private, or charter schools. Make it for your family. Make it unique to what their needs are and what your family needs are. So that was very encouraging. So we pulled the kids, and we started homeschooling with a girl and boy in 7th and 3rd grades. I didn't feel ready. I didn't have a curriculum. I didn't have everything perfectly set up. I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew without a doubt that this is exactly what we needed to do and what we were called to do. Our son was experiencing a lot of challenges, so my mentor said, de-stress and acclimate to the transition by going on a lot of field trips, reading aloud to him, and continuing math. That was it. And I thought, well, there has to be more. And she said, no, this is a great transition. Utilize this time. So we did that, and within a few months, he was reading above his level on his own accord, and he had a desire to learn. The kids were excited about learning. They didn't feel like they had to go to school, regurgitate the information for a test, and move on. I mean, they were really excited about digging into their textbooks. Who reads a textbook, right? We did Apologia, and the kids literally would read their textbooks because they were engaged. And I thought, who reads a science book, right? And the massive stress was gone. That was huge. We did homeschool in our pajamas. That's like the homeschool uniform, right? So, what a difference to wake up, come to school, walk down the hall, you're in school, in your school uniform and your jammies. I mean, it works. So how we started is we, on the slide, do I need to ask for the slide? Oh, there it is. Thank you. So the way we started is we had to give a notice of intent to homeschool. So we did everything on our own. I didn't go through an academy. I just didn't know all the ins and outs, but I knew we just needed to pull our kids. So we had a notice of intent to homeschool. This is the only thing that you need to provide by law. All you need to provide is your child's name, age, the date, hours a day, and how many days is up there already. Just list the address and signature of parents. You do not have to provide the curriculum you're using, the homeschool co-op, or any homeschool academy you're going to. None of that information, because guess what? It's none of their business. So this is the notice of intent that we used. We simply filled it out, and we mailed a copy to the district headquarters that we were in, and then that was it. And we had our freedom. That's all we needed to have our freedom. We started with the standard curriculum where one company puts together all the subjects, and then it wasn't really working, so then we decided to use an eclectic program. So where we just pulled history from this company, science from this company, math from this company, and that's what worked for us. That's the key. Keep it unique to your family. And your kids, they may learn in different styles, and that's okay. Find what works. And if it doesn't work, sell your homeschool stuff, because someone's always going to buy it, because you're going to buy someone else's homeschool stuff. So there's so much information material out there. Cater to your kids what's interested. They were part of the curriculum and picking out what they wanted, so they were more interested, and they had a vested interest in it because they were part of the decisions. That was huge. Co-ops were important to us. There's so many different kinds of co-ops. I encourage you to check them out and to see what works. You're going to hear from some different co-ops tonight. Find what works for your family. Some families need a lot of routine and structure. I'm going to tell you, the Lupias are a fly-by-the-seat kind of a family. And we would homeschool at 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes we'd homeschool at noon. That was more common. We are not an early kind of family. Some families want to get up, let's go, do it. And that's great. Find what works for your family. Do you see the freedom in that? Do you see the lack of stress? That's so, that burden is so lifted. And what do I do for the next slide? Oh, There you go. So I want to give you a couple of resources. One book that's phenomenal is Why Gender Matters. We know there are only two genders, right? And those two genders are vastly different, right? Boys aren't just the same as girls. Girls aren't the same as boys. They're two vastly different genders. This is a great book that teaches you what, anatomically, biologically, why things are different in boys and girls. You'll learn that the rods and cones have different cells in them. You'll understand that girls have more P cells. They see color and texture. They answer questions like, what is it? That's how girls see. Boys have more M cells, and they see location, direction, speed. They answer questions like, where is it now? Where is it going? How fast is it moving? If you think about it, when kids draw, girls draw nouns, boys draw verbs. So give your kid a box of crayons and tell them to draw something, and you'll see what they're going to start drawing. And all of a sudden, boys will draw a line and a triangle, and then they'll say, the rocket's taking off and doing it, because they're drawing verbs. And girls will draw the little house with the flowers and the curtains and the windows and all those little details with all these pretty colors. What a difference reading this book made for me. Also, the next resource is called The Way They Learn. So we don't learn just in three ways, by kinesthetic, auditorily, or visually. We have multiple ways that we learn. And guess what? We're going to probably teach in the way that we learn, but our kids probably may not learn the same way that I do. So I have to learn how to teach in the way that they learn. This is a great book, a great resource of how to help your kids learn those things. I want to give you a list to think about. If you're thinking about going to college, here's a list of colleges that don't take federal money. That's really important, because if your kids are going to go back into state schools, they're going to teach those same agendas, those Marxist agendas that you're pulling them out from. There are a lot of kids who have strong foundations. They go back to these state schools, and then they come home with all these crazy ideas because they've now had the Marxist agenda shoved at them again. Two of the schools I want to encourage you to look at is Pensacola Christian. That's where our son graduated. And then also Hillsdale. Information is out there if you'd like to get some of that information. But check these colleges out and see and understand that they don't take federal funding. Also, I want to encourage you to think about trade school versus college. It's really important. We are losing our trades, and there are so many options in those careers. Mike Rowe has a foundation, and he talks about the trades. Y'all seen Mike Rowe's show? So, Dirty Jobs, right. So we're losing our trades, and the different path that your kids can go on with trade schools, not everybody's meant to go to college, not everybody wants to go to college. You know, I'll be honest with you, I have a college degree. I'll sell it to you for $5 because honestly, it didn't do much for me. My life experience and what I was involved in, that taught me mostly everything I needed to know.
At the risk of endangering myself, you're at the
So
over mark.
I want to encourage you to take a look at trade schools. Oops. It's not on there. So I want to encourage you to take a look at trade schools because they're usually much less expensive than colleges. Your kids won't go into debt. We have $1.5 trillion student loan debt. And we're pushing money to people to go into debt who can't pay it back, and then we're under this burden, right? So trade schools teach work ethic too. Think about it. And I'm going to be honest with you, think about the trades, man. They make bank, right? So if you can make bank and you don't have a college student loan, you know, where can you go in that? So I want to encourage you to take a look at those as options. It's not anything negative that our society has pushed. It's an agenda that our society and our culture is pushing. It'd be proud to have trades. So wherever direction that fits your family and your kids, that's what's going to be best for them. Thank you.
So while we're transitioning here, our second speaker, and I neglected to introduce all the speakers. So this is actually Steve Craig. He's the executive director of CHEC, which is the Christian Home Educators of Colorado. So he's going to be speaking next. And if you want to go ahead and transition up, I just wanted to add to something Elizabeth was talking about. When you register with a school district, you can actually, in the state of Colorado, you can register with any district in the state of Colorado, which is interesting, but typically you're going to do the one that you live in. And the benefit of doing that is your children then get to participate in the extracurricular activities. So band, sports, those sorts of things. Our son played lacrosse all the way from when he was in second grade through high school. He was the varsity goalie for the lacrosse team at the high school in our district. Our daughter played field hockey, soccer. So there's lots of opportunities there. And the last thing I wanted to do before we send Steve on his way, we used to ski a lot. We loved to ski before we had adult things to do. But we used to ski probably 40 or 50 days a year. But the benefit of homeschooling was we could go up on Tuesday, we'd ski Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we'd come home on Friday when everybody else was heading up into the mountains. And so we'd go ski in the morning and then come back and do our homeschool in the afternoon and the evening. And so we could still get done what we needed to do, but we were having PE, and the principal gets to decide a lot of what we're doing. So field trips to the zoo. Hey, we just studied about giraffes. Let's go to the zoo and have a day looking at giraffes today. So there's just lots of flexibility in that. But Steve, I'm going to go ahead and launch it over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Well, good evening. It's great to be with you all. My name is Steve Craig, Executive Director for Christian Home Educators of Colorado. And I love talking to parents about homeschooling. It's something I'm super passionate about because I was homeschooled all the way through high school. My wife was as well. And so when the opportunity came for me to jump into this position with CHEC, it was really a way for me to give back and to invest into something that I believe has made a huge impact in my own life. So one of my jobs tonight is to just say, hey, I speak as a grateful homeschool grad. Your kids will be grateful if you embark on this journey. It has the opportunity to make a everlasting difference in their lives. And so I really encourage you just from that angle. There's millions of homeschool grads around the world now today that are looking back on homeschooling and are very grateful. So that's the one probably most important thing I wanted to say to you tonight. CHEC is a statewide homeschool organization. So we represent homeschoolers around the state, providing them with resources and training. And we help homeschoolers kind of connect to a lot of the local resources, some of which are represented here tonight, to get them plugged in with the things that will help them to be successful in their journey. We definitely are available to help demystify the process. We have an office. You can call us 10 to 5 days a week. So if there's any legal questions or anything like that, you're not sure, hey, notice of intent or what, I heard something about umbrella schools, what's up with that? You can always just call us and we can answer your questions, or you can check us out on the web at chec.org. So we provide lots of training events. We have a huge conference in Denver every year with lots of vendors from around the country that are there. We also do lobbying on behalf of homeschoolers. So we are at the Capitol regularly, making sure that homeschool freedom is being looked after, parental rights. So that's one of our big roles as well, as training and stuff like that. We also have an umbrella school, and we have some other umbrella schools here tonight for those that want to go that route. So that's a quick overview of CHEC and what we do. We want you, here's the second thing I wanted to tell you tonight, is that we want you to know that you can do this. I think the number one thing that we hear is, oh, well, hey, I love homeschooling. That's really sweet. That's a nice idea, but I could never do that, even very educated college teachers feel like they couldn't, educate their own children. And we're here to say that is not the case. You can teach your children. You are your children's first and best teachers. Let me say that again. You are your children's first and best teachers. You can do this. And so we want to help you know that you can do this. We want to plug you into the resources to help you be successful. You know, we've kind of grown up in a culture where homeschooling sort of feels like the new kid on the block. But, you know, people have been homeschooling their children since the beginning of time. It's really, you know, the modern education system over the last 100 years that has taken over. And that actually isn't the norm historically. The norm is for children to be taught by their parents at home. When you look at the big picture of history, so this is nothing new. It's nothing, counter what's been happening for a long time. So you can do this. You know, as a homeschool dad now we have 6 children, 1 on the way. I've got three of my oldest here tonight. They want to tag along with me. You know, I grew up being homeschooled, always planned to homeschool my children. And I got to admit that there's some days now where it's like, you know, the yellow school bus goes by and you're like, take them. Sorry, kids. Not really. They're very sweet. So I will say that homeschooling isn't easy. It's not always a walk in the park. I think, can be the best thing for your family. But it is a work. It's a walk of faith. I'm not here to tell you that homeschooling is like a breeze. I wonder today, like, I grew up thinking, oh yeah, I always homeschool my kids, and now it's like, whoa, how did mom do that? But what God calls you to do, He gives you the grace to do. And that's the other thing I want to say to you tonight. If you're sitting there wondering, I really want to homeschool, but I don't think I could do that, it's a step of faith. It's the grace of God that allows us and enables us to do the things that He's calling us to do. So if you feel Him calling you into this, believe that He'll equip you in the ways that He wants to equip you to do it. He will enable you. And that's sort of the biggest thing I can say. Yes, you can call our office. All of these folks up here can help you and help you on the journey in different ways. But ultimately, it's the grace of God that enables you to do this thing that is with you to train and to disciple your children, to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And that's the end goal, right? This is not really, as has already been said, a matter of trying to learn how to do school at home. This is a completely different thing. This is a mindset of discipleship. We are trying to raise our children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and schooling is a context in which we can do that. Rather than just learning science facts, we can point our children to the amazing God who made all of the stuff around us, and we can draw them into the worship of God within the classroom. What an awesome opportunity, and how much more exciting to learn about the things in the world around us when there's a point to it all, when it's not a matter of getting a certain grade on a test, but when it's a matter of drawing us to our Creator and learning about Him. So I just encourage you guys. I love talking with you because you love your kids. You care about them. You want to do what's best for them. And we're here to cheer you along, to answer your questions, and to help you know you can do this. So that's what I got tonight, Peter.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. That's great. So I just want to add on that Steve way undersold the conference that they put on every year. The homeschool conference that Czech puts on in, what are the dates this year? I know it's always in June typically, right?
Yes, Father's Day weekend.
Father's Day weekend, 15th through the 18th of June. But they take over an entire conference center. I mean, it's big enough that it has a hotel attached, or I don't know if you guys changed venues, that's where it used to be. But it's a huge venue, just literally hundreds of vendors there. And the beauty is, you can take your kids and you can let them look at the curriculum. Let them see, hey, what do I like? What don't I like? Here's some that are completely computer-based. Here's some that are all hands-on. Here's some that are art. Whatever the case may be, you can build a eclectic curriculum that uses things from multiple different providers. You can buy a homeschool package that, hey, here's your third grade package from somebody like a Becca or someone like that. So it's clearly the best way to go get resources. Plus, they bring in really top-notch teachers and speakers and teaching you on excellence in writing, I think, right? Andrew Pudawa always comes there, and you will be amazed at the things that you will learn as a parent, and then the things you'll be able to teach your kids from there. So thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, next we're going to bring up Erica Danielson, and she is with High Country Home Educators, who work out of New Life Church. It's a ministry of New Life Church, and we spent many a year there, and then I'll let you go. Thank you, Erica.
Sure. Thank you, guys. So tonight I'm presenting for High Country Home Educators of New Life Church. And we have 3 different ways that we support our families. And they're through enrichment classes, support group, which is like community type of things. And then we have a Christian Academy, which is an umbrella school. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those. So on-site classes vary every semester. So our teachers that teach for us teach their passions. So we have she's a doctor that works in Children's Hospital, and she does our biology. We have many retired Air Force professors that teach our algebra and physics. And then we have local artists that come teach art classes for us, and some new computer classes. Every semester, new people come. So when we ask our teachers to come teach for us, we're asking them to teach skills to our kids, of course, but we also, every class, share the gospel and make sure they're prayed over each semester. So when you're coming here, you're getting more than just a few facts. We take a bunch of classes at my house, and they get to perform. Our performances are actually next week, and I'm looking forward to getting to see all the music and the improv and all those type of things. And so it does vary every semester because they are teach by passion teachers, and so you never know what you're going to expect. Our new handbook does come out this Friday of what's going to come next fall, but every semester is different. So if you look this semester and say, hey, that didn't fit for me, that's okay. Look next semester. And for ours, you can sign up for one class, which is an hour, or you can sign up for the whole day. So because I work there, my kids take about 4 to 5 classes per day, and sometimes 3 now that mine is old enough to serve, because she does serve in some other areas. So I'll talk about that here soon. But that's kind of what that looks like. So some things to know about that: you do stay on site as a parent. We believe you are the ones that are called to raise your children. We're here to provide some fun things for them to do, some skills you might not know much about that they can learn from others. But you are ultimately their one that's in charge all the time. So we have a theater that's set up. It's actually probably about the size of this room with round tables. And we highly encourage you to stay, bring your lunch, even if your kids are out of class, because you get to have those friendships, and then your kids can play on the playground. And those are I would say the best memories are the people. So, come and stay there. Volunteering is a way to help you can save on the class costs. You can volunteer in many aspects. It's simple as cleaning the lunch tables for 1 hour. So that makes a big impact. So we do that, and then they get to have the teens volunteer. Like I said, my daughter now does do that, and she actually serves in the nursery where the teachers' kids get to play, and that is her favorite part of the day. So it's kind of funny to hear her come back and be like, hey, my best part was so-and-so's piggyback ride. But she's learning to serve, she's praying with those kids, and so we're getting them ready. And they can start that as young as 12, and then at 14, they can help in other classrooms. And so that's one aspect, is the classes. And then we have our community stuff. We actually had a community and family night tonight where we had a bounce house and pizza and face painting. And it was just a night for us to celebrate who we are. And we're almost through our semester. We just want to have a lot of fun and get ready for next year. Things that we have nights like that throughout the year. We have a stampede where we hire somebody to come and lead line dances, and we do potluck and food like that. And we have a graduation that's coming up here in May, and that is the tearjerker. If you guys want to go, I don't know if I can do this, just go sit there and watch. They come up on stage, and parents will say, this is the best decision I ever made. And I can tell you, I've only been doing my homeschool for 6 years now, and I'm going to tell you it's the best decision I ever made. So there's if you want to come see graduation, you are all invited. It's an open event to just kind of get an idea of what might be to expect. Some other things that we do are field trips and service events. We try to at least do one service and field trip event per month so that we can get involved in the community as well as see some places we might not know are around and get that group rate, because that's nice as well. And we have Moms Group. So Moms Group is really just Moms Group. I don't know if anyone attended MOPS. I do use that analogy because it is, you get together, you have your big group, you get poured into 1 week, and then the next week you break into small groups and get to know each other. And you can pray for each other, maybe share curriculum ideas. There's anything you really need in that circle. And then the last part that I'm talking about is our independent school. And this part is totally optional. Actually, all of ours is optional, just so you know. You can sign up for a little, sign up for a lot. But this part is one that I personally chose because I walked in and was the parent that said, I don't know if I can do this. And I had been teaching preschool. So I walked into High Country 6 years ago and said, help. I don't know what I'm doing. And I had attended New Life, so I knew they had registration coming up. And Jennifer, our administrator of the academy, sat me down and was like, okay, here you go. You have these choices you can choose from, and just sent me out. I went to Mardell's and just checked everything out. So if you're feeling lost, great place to start. But they help you through curriculum stuff. And now as I'm running around and with sports and all the field trips and zoo activities, they help me keep my records straight. So I like their accountability. That's personally for me, because I think I would forget to turn in my grades for the year. And so I appreciate them. So this is just something that if you're one that wants to just go have fun all the time and might not need some accountability, they're a good choice. They help me do that. They also provide testing, which we just did ours last week. So we do the Terra Nova 2, and so they just proctor the test. In Colorado, you need testing starting in 3rd grade every odd year. And so we provide that as well. And that's all my slides. So just a little bit of encouragement that I would say is, I've been in your shoes. It's going to be okay. And I would just find a community, whether it's ours or it's another one. I would definitely go to the Czech conference. That'll be amazing. I've attended there as well and sat in and figured out some tricks of how to help teach my kids. But if you find a group of people that can pray with you and do life with you, then it's going to be fun. And just have fun. I can tell you the best conversations me and my kids have are usually our morning. I'm still having coffee, and yes, I'm in my PJs. And we start with Bible, and then we move into story time. And you get to know a little bit about each aspect of their life. And if you can pour into them and help them stand on their feet, that's exactly what they need. So just have fun, and you can do this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Okay, so you're headed back to the table, but I have a question for you to answer for everybody. So you can answer from the table or up there, wherever you want to be. Just with a microphone, yes. So how many children are going through High Country right now, and how many families is that serving?
Yeah, we serve 250 families this semester, and that's about 500 students.
That's awesome.
And yeah.
Yeah, I know when we were there were about just under 700 children and about 300 families that were represented. So, and I know that ebbs and flows with everything, but so the other thing, and this was the beauty of homeschooling here, guys. So we met on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and classes start at 9 a.m., so you don't have to be there super early. And last class ends at 3 p.m., correct?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to have you correct me if I go off track here. Start school after Labor Day.
Oh, we are starting before Labor Day this year, August 23rd.
Okay, so end of August. That's okay. After everybody else. And then...
But we end right before Thanksgiving. And we purposely do that so that you can have the holiday with your family. And then we register in the first week of January, right after the new year, and start classes the first week of February. So you have that nice time to just have fun with it, like make those family memories. December is when we're focused on the Lord, so it has that great cut back from your activities. That made me think of something. So when I do my schedule for my kids, and like I said, pick what's for you, and everyone keeps telling you that, I'm going to tell you the same thing. So we go through and we pick classes and say, what are you interested in taking? And then I just fill in the holes. So normally at home, I teach some science and some math, and then a lot of fun projects. So you can do the same thing and mix and match what works for you.
And that's where I was leading you with the dates and stuff, because you guys are getting ready to graduate the end of this month, or
May
first part of May.
15th.
Yeah. So think about that. So for those of you, and that's all that I was going to lead you through. Thank you. But think about that. If your kids are in school, you're dropping your kids off at 7:30 in the morning. You're picking them up at 3:30, maybe not, 5 days a week. And you're doing that from mid-August up to and through Christmas. You maybe get 2 weeks off during that time period over the holidays, and then you're right back into it the first week in January, and then you go through mid to late May at all of these school districts. So accomplishing literally in 2 days, and that doesn't mean you're not doing stuff at home on the other days, but you're reading, you're writing, arithmetic, all the standards, and they do have those all of the time. They do a really good job of making sure that if you want to take algebra, they've got writing, they've got that kind of stuff. But the extras are just awesome, and they change frequently. So they have lunch there, so you don't have to leave. If you're a parent, I know one of my greatest joys, I was a hall monitor, which you have the ability to be the hall monitor who tells everybody, what are you doing? Do you have a bathroom pass? Da, 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 da. Or you could do like I used to do, which was awesome. It was called the Book of Questions, and it was just biblical stuff and things to make think. And I would sneak up on the high school age kids and ask them a question. And at first they would run away from me, but after a while they'd see me walking out, do you have the book? Do you have the book? Do you have the book? And we'd go through that, and we'd get into these big discussions between classes. So it was awesome. It's just an awesome opportunity to sew in. You could be a teacher's assistant. You could be, there's all kinds of different roles and different things you can do. So it's an opportunity for you to engage as well as your children. But the beauty too of the location with High Country, I'll just put this out there because it affected our family. Pikes Peak Community College, literally the kids can walk across the street. So when they get to be high school age, they can become dual enrolled, and they can be taking their high school classes and finishing that up and starting college level classes at the same time. Both of our kids technically graduated high school, our son at 17 and our daughter at 16. And then they were so by the time they went off to go to college, they both had 30 some odd hours of college credit built up, so when they got to college, they could take things a little easier and lighter. So anyway, thank you for that. That was a great experience. Next, I would like to call up Sarah DeYoung, and she is with Classical Conversations. And while she's heading up, I just want to remind everybody, feel free to text in your questions. When we get through with the presentations, we'll start to address those.
Why, hi there, everybody. My name is Sarah DeYoung, and these are my children. Taylor is 17, and our son Eli is going to be 16 next month. We have been homeschooling since 2014, but unlike these champions, I was a reluctant homeschooler. My kids were 14 months apart, and when they came school age, I thought, oh, thank goodness, you can go to school. And when they were in kindergarten and first grade, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And after years of Cancerland treatments, my perspective of things that were important changed. And in 2014, when I was clear that I was going to survive, my husband once again asked, what do you think about homeschooling these two? And my answer was a quick yes. But my why at the time was because I needed to spend time with them. They were so young that they only had memories of me being a sick mom. They didn't have memories of me being a fun mom with energy or hair. And so my why at the time was, yes, I want to spend time with my kids. But how? You've heard from this panel that there is an abundance of options, right? You can get lost in the sea of options. You can hemorrhage money in the options. And I needed something that I could do at home, and do it well. And after looking at all these options, my husband and I really needed to answer, well, what do we want out of it? What is our thing that we want to do with our homeschooling? What's our goal? And so we really started focusing on our why and our purpose and what we wanted out of it. I was afraid, as you've heard before, it's a very nerve-wracking thing to do. Am I smart enough? I do have a college degree, and I thought, all right, I'm good through 8th grade. But then what after 8th grade, right? High school is scary stuff. And am I equipped to do it? How am I going to learn how to teach? Well, thankfully, my friend Julie was bringing classical conversations into our very small town of Mahomet and invited me to an information meeting. And one of the many taglines that Classical Conversation has is that they teach kids how to think, not what to think. And I came back from that meeting and I told my husband, we've been asking the wrong question. It's not how am I going to teach, I need to know how to learn, because I don't want my kids to be an adult thinking they can get through 8th grade. I want them getting through all of the subjects, all of the strands. I want them to be able to learn whatever they want, no matter the degree, no matter the difficulty. I want them to have the skills to be able to learn. So we were all in with Classical Conversations. I am currently an area director or an area representative for Classical Conversations. My official role, I help support communities now from South Denver, the whole southern part of the state, and then the western slope. And I'm also a Challenge 2 director, and I'm going to be a Challenge 4 director. So this kid is going to tackle physics next year because I know how to learn, and I can help high schoolers enjoy learning too. Let's go to the next slide. With Classical Conversations, when we were searching for how we were going to do this, when we're looking at the we believes that Classical Conversations has, the number one thing that they have, the purpose of education, is to know God and to make him known. And that was in sync with what my husband and I wanted for our kids. We wanted them to know the Lord and have the confidence and the words to winsomely express what they know to be true to not only their peers, but their coworkers, their spouse, their kids, their neighbors, the male people. We wanted them to feel comfortable in knowing their Creator and making him known to whoever the Lord brought across their path. The three things that we really were drawn in the we believes, and you guys can read them, I'm not going to read them all to you, is number 4, education is a responsibility of the family with support from fellow believers. And that bookends really nicely with number 5. The support of community enhances our ability to fulfill parental duties. You've heard from these guys that we want families having that ownership of educating their kids. We want you guys to feel equipped on how to do it. So we're not just going to give you a curriculum and say, here's a workbook, here's an online video, here's a textbook that you can read and take tests. We're going to give you the classical tools so you can learn anything at any age. Number 9 has always stuck out to me. When I train our directors, and I have about 69 directors that I help support, and directors, they're in the tutor role, they're the lead learner in our community. And number 9 reads, classical education prepares us to accept the responsibilities of Christian freedoms. When we look at that sentence, we're going to look at the back end of it first. What is a Christian freedom? What is that? What does it mean to have the responsibility of Christian freedom? What's the difference between accepting it and having our kids under our thumb because mom and dad say so? Our goal for our kids is to raise them up and accept the responsibilities of Christian freedom. I think the world would be such a different place if more kids were raised with these tenets. I hope that you guys would agree. Looking at what classical conversation is, in the most basic premise, we are a tutoring service for parents. We want to equip you and keep you at the helm of your kids' education. This is a great diagram that shows that in this pyramid, parents are always at the top. This pyramid can't get tipped over. We are not truancy officers. We do not grade papers. We do not collect papers. There's nothing that you turn in or we hand out. We have conversations and equip you and your kids in a partnership relationship. We are not the authority, you are. We will help keep you in this place of authority. We will keep you in this place of authority by showing you how to tailor these assignments, how to expand them, because tailoring can sometimes let things out, and tailoring sometimes bring things in. We are also skiers, Tuesday skiers. Although you're a wicked show-off, if you're getting 50 days in a year, we're ringing in at about 30, and we're pretty excited. But we're Tuesday skiers. So we do sometimes work on Saturdays, and sometimes in the evenings, like you've heard these guys say. But we have the freedom and the ability to tailor and not have to explain our tailoring to anybody. We do what's best for our kids. The classical model allows kids, no matter their learning style or ability, to succeed in acquiring information, wrestling with it, and then expressing it. No two kids are the same. My daughter Taylor, who you saw earlier, can sit with her hands on the table, her back straight, and she can recite memory work for hours. My son Eli will do the same reciting of memory work, but at Cirque du Soleil, and God help the fig tree that has all of its leaves plucked off of it, because he's just doing his math facts, plucking leaves off of my trees. But we have that freedom to have these different mental arenas because our arena is our home. We learn math facts by jumping over creeks and being on the swing. We go outside in the world to study God's creation. We don't handcuff ourselves to the kitchen table. That's not homeschooling. That's just taking what we did and made me comfortable teaching through 8th grade into our home and saying, there, now you're just handcuffed to this table rather than that table. We need to flex our responsibility to our kids and meet them where they're at. We need to go into their world rather than have them be a slave to our checklist. And we do that through partnering with you because you know your kids best. I don't. I like your kids, but you know them best, so you do it. This is one of my favorite diagrams that CC offers. This explains really the classical learning method. And there's a lot in this, but I want to bring your attention first to the two teal elements in here. We have strands all around God, and there's tiny little arrows pointing everywhere. God is at the center of all we do. Because remember, our first thing that we do, we believe, is to know God and make him known. And we don't do that by learning math apart from God, by learning language apart from God. God spoke the world into existence, so language is important to our Creator. God is the center of all we do. We have a biblical worldview. We look at the authority and the testimony of all things that are in the Bible, and we learn through his authority. The top part there, it says purpose doxology. Why? Doxology is our praise. Our work is our worship with our kids. And you've heard these guys say, homeschooling's tough, right? There are times that we sing songs of praise, and there are also songs of lament, people. But it is our doxology. It is our worship to the Lord, what we do with our kids. What's your why? Are you homeschooling for something? Or are you homeschooling because you're against something else? That matters. I told you before my homeschooling why was to spend time with my kids. And over the last 8 years, it's changed. I want my kids to know how to think. I want them to be able to identify a fallacy. I want them to wrestle with premises, with thinking. I want them to have right thinking so they can have right actions. Right? That's virtue. Virtue is Latin for man. The translation actually means the man's man. It's of the man. It's the guy that knows what's right and does what's right. And they do that through knowing the Lord in all things. And that's what I want for my kids. We cover grammar, which is the little kids. They just absorb things, right? The alphabet, the songs. 7 years ago, you couldn't find a 5-year-old that did not know all the words to Frozen. You couldn't, because they're little sponges. And so we meet them at their brain development. That's how our Creator has designed their brains to learn. So we're going to meet them in that way. The next one is dialectic. That's the why, the pertinent stage. Why do I have to brush my teeth? Why do I have to make my bed? Why can't I get new technology? Why can't I stay up watching TV all night long? They're asking you, why is it pertinent? So we give them the questions to ask so they can understand. Because I said so isn't satisfactory at this age. And so we can't give them that. We need to meet them where they're at and explain to them, honey, you need to brush your teeth because blah, 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 rather than just because mom says so. The next stage is the rhetoric stage, and that's called the poetic stage. That's where they're like, Mom, remember when we were counting all my teeth and I know all my teeth and you told me I need to take care of them? I get it now. I understand why I have teeth. I understand why the Lord created me like this. And do you know that sharks have teeth and eels have teeth and fish have teeth? And we study teeth, and it becomes an amazing thing for these kids. And they thank us for telling them to brush their teeth. But God is at the center of all we do.
I hate to be the guy with the hook. Oh, you're not that. Are you done?
What was that? I just had this one, that this is who
There
we
you
are.
go.
This is kind of what we do.
Thank you.
I have colleagues out there. We have catalogs to show you so you can take this information home. Everything just came from our catalog, so take one home if you want, share it with friends, but we'll be out there and look forward to seeing you in a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you leave that mic? Awesome. Thank you. So while Sarah's transitioning back over, I just wanted to go to one thing that she mentioned about, oh, am I able to do this? Can I do this? I only got through 8th grade, whatever. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Okay, that's not of the Lord when it comes to you stewarding your children. That's the enemy. And who are the people that you primarily hear that from? Teachers and the teachers' unions who have vested interest in having your kids in a school, right? So they're the ones that are always going to tell you, they're the ones that are always talking about, they're in the media all the time, well, parents aren't smart enough to homeschool their kids. They are not teachers. They're not educators. They're not 17 different reasons why. Well, guess what? Your kids will work out. You'll do just fine with your kids. I promise you. Every one of them is different. I met Steve's kids that are here with him tonight, and one has a backpack that weighs about 400 pounds because he's got a bunch of history textbooks in there that he wants to. He loves history, and he's doing it. The other one had a backpack that was pretty light. It's full of art supplies. She's an art lover. She's looking at art stuff. The other one has no backpack. I said, what's up with that? And they were like, she's the free spirit. She's just here to soak it up and learn. So every kid is different. You'll do just fine. I promise you that. Okay. Next thing I want to, our next speaker I want to introduce is Deborah Randall. And Deborah is an evaluator. So you heard Erica mention testing on the odd number years, 3rd, 5th, 7th, et cetera, going up. The alternative to that is having an evaluation done. And Deborah is somebody who does that. So Deborah, thank you.
So, hello, I'm Deborah Randall, as you mentioned. My family has been homeschooling for 13 years, and I'll back up a few years ago, many years ago. I went to public school. I then went to a private Christian school. I then taught public school, and I'm homeschooling now. And so you're wondering probably, why would you do that? And then I've often had parents ask me, so of course you can homeschool because you have an elementary education degree. So the reality is a lot of what you do in an elementary school classroom, you're not going to do with 2 children at home that are different ages too. And so the great example of this was my daughter, who is now going to be graduating through High Country in May. When she was turning 1st grade, I asked her, so tell me, what do you want to study this year? And so she said, Mommy, I want to study the American Revolutionary War. Okay, so I taught 1st grade for 8 years. You don't really study the American Revolutionary War in 1st grade. So, being the wise mom, I said, of course, we will study the American Revolutionary War. We went to the library and checked out many, 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 many things. And one of the things we got introduced to was a wonderful organization called Visionaires. They were based out of Denver, and I believe still are. And they do an American Revolutionary War reenactment. And we went to the one in April years ago. now when she was in first grade. She's now a senior in high school. And she loves to dress up, but she also is a warrior at heart. So she's not in the pretty petticoat with the hat on. No, she is in full uniform, and she has the tri-corner hat, she has the uniform, and of course she has the rifle. And she sees them down, and they are all decked out. So they're men and women, and they do a wonderful job reenacting this. She sees them, and she jumps out of the car and runs down the hill. It was at an old school. And she joins the battle. And it was just such an encouragement in my heart that she is doing what God has called her to do. She is a warrior for God. And that's what we are ultimately training up. Earlier, somebody mentioned what the why. The why for me is, where do I want my children down the road? The biggest one is I want them to be able to hear from God. I want when they leave my home, they know how they learn and they know how they hear from God. One of the things, if you'd ask my children, one more little story is like, what do I always say? And they're like, you always say we can learn all the time, Mom. I am old enough that I went to school before computers were in the classroom. I am old enough that I did not have a cell phone until after I was married. We have learned how to do all of those things. And so if you think of that, like, how am I going to homeschool? You will. You've learned how to use a computer. You've learned how to use a cell phone. You all know how to text. You all know how to airdrop, which I've just learned this past week. So there's that. And then one other thing to just encourage you, there are so many scriptures about taking care of your children, and one of them is from Proverbs. So it's in the Amplified version, and I was trying to remember it, so if I don't have it correct, just give me grace on that one. But it's basically, train up a child in the way he, or since I have daughters, or she should go. And then in the Amplified, it adds in, according to his or her individual bent. And when they are old, they'll not depart from it. And that's a verse that I have on my homeschooling notebook. And so with that, again, we've been homeschooling now for 13 years. In May, we will be graduating our oldest daughter. I've served the homeschooling community for 9 years as a homeschooling evaluator and also a test administrator too. And so I'll be sharing a little bit more about testing and evaluation. As discussed earlier, there are ways you can homeschool in Colorado via letter of intent. Under an umbrella school, it does not mean it rains in Colorado, okay? That's not that type of an umbrella. Or via a parent's Colorado teaching license. For this presentation, I'm focusing on the assessment process for families who homeschool via a letter of intent, as those under an umbrella school will follow that school's guidelines, and families homeschooling under a parent's license can choose what that process will look like. According to Colorado's home-based education law, families homeschooling via a letter of intent need to have their children assessed at the completion of 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th grades. Families can choose to have their children complete a nationally standardized achievement test or have an evaluation performed by a qualified individual. The results of the test or the evaluation are then submitted by the parent either to the school district, which received the letter of intent, or to an independent or parochial school. The second option is often called a testing repository or record storage, and Czech does offer that service, correct, Steve? And does High Country? High Country does too. So if you choose the second option, the name of the independent school then must be provided to the school district, which received the letter of intent. In regards to testing, the test must be a nationally standardized achievement test, such as the Iowa Assessment Tests, formerly the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, or Standard Achievement Test. I've used 2 companies, BJU Press and Seton Testing, to obtain the tests, as well as for scoring and reporting documentation. Each company and test have their own guidelines as to whether a parent can give the test, the cost of the exam, the length of the exam, and what the testing documentation covers. Both of the companies do also have online testing options. As for scoring requirements, the child must receive a composite score above the 13th percentile. If the child scores at or below the 13th percentile, the law notes the next steps to be taken, including retesting. The other assessment option is an evaluation. The evaluation needs to be done by a qualified person as defined by Colorado home-based legislation. The evaluation is to assess the child's academic progress to determine if Per home-based legislation, the child is making sufficient academic progress according to that child's ability. And I want to really emphasize that. I've been able to do, as I mentioned, evaluations for 9 years, and I've had children that are mute. And so their evaluation is much different than the 7th grader who is reading quantum physics textbooks. And so it's really, the assessment is based upon what that child's capabilities are. For the evaluations I perform, I meet with the family for an hour and review the prior year's learning activities. And just a note, the exact evaluation process is not detailed in the law. With the options of testing or evaluation available in Colorado, I'm often asked what option a family should choose. Wonderfully, each family gets to choose, and you can change your assessment choice from year to year. And I want to, before I share some of the questions, I also thought of CHEC as one of the resources, and on their website, they list out different evaluators. So if you're not here in the Colorado Springs area, there are a number that do serve here, but there are ones that are listed on their site that do evaluations or test administration there. So here's some questions to consider when you're pondering, do I do a test or do I do an evaluation? Number 1, do you or your family have a personal preference? Number 2, what is the age of your child? Typically, older students, 5th grade and above, have done some testing in their regular work. Their reading speed and comprehension are better, and their attention spans are longer, so testing may be a fit. Number 3, are they fidgety? Testing takes several hours, whereas the type of evaluation I perform is an hour in length. Number 4, does your child have test anxiety? Number 5, do they do well at timed activities? Some, though not all tests, are timed, again based upon the company's guidelines. Number 6, does your child have special learning needs? And again, I've had the privilege of evaluating children at all levels. Number 7, if your child is older, will they be attending college or a trade school? If so, testing may be a skill they need to master and may help them receive scholarships by completing the SAT or ACT. And a fun little story from a friend of mine, she also homeschooled her children through kindergarten, and when her daughter went to take the SAT, she was like, okay, God, this is the big time, whether I have blown it all these years for my children or not. And she got the scores back and felt like, okay, we didn't knock it out of the park. It wasn't like the perfect score, but it was well enough to tenderize her heart that she had made the right decision. And then number 8, what is the time frame you have to get it done? Testing takes time to order, complete, return, be scored, and obtain the results. Evaluations take time to gather work, schedule, and perform the evaluation. In conclusion, after the assessment is completed, please remember to turn in the results to the district or testing repository school and keep a copy for your records. Also, most importantly, for yourself, please make time to read and understand Colorado's home-based education law for yourself as you decide what learning route to follow. And in that, we are pretty familiar with some of the different jargon that's in homeschooling land, and so feel free to ask us, like, we don't understand the term independent school, or umbrella school, or notice of intent, or parochial school, or what other term that just seems to be flowing out of our mouths and you have no idea what we're talking about. So, and then as has mentioned before, homeschooling is a blessing, one that has brought rich fruit in my family's lives, and you can do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah. And I'll just add, from our family's perspective, we did evaluations all the time because our son was terrible at taking standardized tests and the time and et cetera. And when he had to do something like that, he did not score well, but he could sit with an evaluator in a much shorter period of time who could actually sit there and watch him and listen to him and hear him read and do things right in front of them. So it's a fantastic option. And as she mentioned, Christian Home Educators of Colorado. So if you're not here in the local Colorado Springs area, they have lots of resources. High Country is here, but they're always willing to help you as well. And Classical Conversations is all over I may steal some of your thunder here, but they're all over not only Colorado, but the United States and around the world. There are classical conversation groups all over the world. They travel a lot with the military folks, military families. So great resources, again, and evaluators everywhere. So we're going to wrap up our presentation here, and then we'll go to the questions and answers. So again, please text in 719-357-7753 if you have a question for one of the panelists or all of them. But I want to bring it back to Elizabeth just for a couple minutes real quickly to wrap up with some additional information about some of the folks that are outside.
I just wanted to take a minute and talk to you about HSLDA. That's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. There's information on the tables out there, and what I could say most about HSLDA, it's your insurance policy. So they fight really, really hard, along with Chuck, about your homeschool rights. They're fighting at the federal level, they're starting at the state level, but this is basically your insurance policy. If CPS shows up your house and says you're abusing your children because you're homeschooling, then if you are a member of HSLDA, they will call on your behalf, they will write letters on your behalf, they will sue on your behalf. They are phenomenal. I'm glad to say that we never had to utilize our membership. I said Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And there's applications out there and describes what the membership is. There are also a plethora of resources that they offer, like Chuck. I could not have made it through without HSLDA and Chuck. They are phenomenal. They have other guides out there, a guide for homeschooling through high school, and you can homeschool. And the best kind of socialization. How many of you have heard that homeschoolers are not socialized? Anyone? Yeah, right? We thought the same thing. They're weird, they're not socialized, so not true. We had to say no to more activities than when we were in public, charter, or private school because we had freedom, right? And our schedule was so full of socialized events. There are weird people out there in everything. Yes, there are weird homeschoolers, there are weird waitresses, there are weird engineers, there are weird people. The Lupias, I'm gonna say, are weird. But, right, it's a whole different culture, and you'll find that freedom in it. Just to wrap up, I want to say the Chuck Conference is phenomenal. Please see if you can go to that. They have a used curriculum sale the day before the conference. You can buy tons of used curriculum. It's phenomenal, and you will get so excited. I was just up there last year for a booth thing, and I was going through picking out which workshops I needed to go to and check out the booths. I'm like, wait, we don't homeschool anymore. But it's so exciting. So if you guys haven't gotten the idea that homeschoolers like to talk, homeschool parents, because we're so excited about what we do. We're so excited. We want you to have what we've experienced. We want to help, we want to help you through it because it's so impactful. We all know what it's done for our families and the impact that it's made. So co-ops are phenomenal. Do what your family needs. We were at High Country for a season. We did classical conversations for a season. We had a fantastic evaluator. Your evaluator walks alongside you. They're your friend. Your evaluator is phenomenal. So pick what works for your family. Go visit the different co-ops. See what works for you. And lastly, just to let you know that it is an adventure, right? It's a POTA. It's all a part of the adventure. You are not alone. You do not have to do this by yourself. There's over 60,000 kids. Is that right? 60,000 families or 60,000 homeschoolers?
In Colorado.
Okay, 60,000. Just in Colorado, homeschooling. You're not alone. So come join us on this adventure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so a lot of great information. We're going to ask some questions. I actually have some here that are going to be for the whole panel. So everybody prepare to give me your 1 minute because we're all homeschoolers. So the beauty of that is everybody's got something to contribute here. So one of the questions is, and we'll start at that end of the table with Deborah, and we'll work our way back. So what is one of the most amazing things that you learned about one of your children because you were homeschooling?
I think the thing that always sticks out in my mind is the very unique personality traits and learning what's going on in their heart. Like you have time when they are breaking down over math to talk about like what's really happening, what's stressing you right now. Having, again, been public schooled, I knew that, like, we didn't have that time. Like, I was gone by 7:30, I was home by 4:30, I played volleyball, so I didn't have that time with my parents, and having that time with my children.
So I have two kids, and they're different people. They learn different styles, and to be the one to come alongside of them and press into their strengths and their weaknesses, I don't think a teacher that has 25, 30 kids in the class can give that one-on-one attention to them. And I know my kids. I know what they rejoice in, and I know what frustrates them. I help them overcome things and challenge them. And it's a safe environment that they feel that they can rise up and do the things that maybe they doubted. And it's awesome. It's awesome to celebrate their successes with them.
I think these are all kind of similar. I've learned that they learn very differently. And my oldest wants to do the hardest of everything. She will pick the hardest guitar song, most competitive sports league she can get in, and that she needs so basically she needs a challenge. And so how to accomplish all of that and keep her challenged. My other one needs to have time to invent and experiment with lots of hands-on things. So how to get some book work done in the morning so that he can have the afternoon to explore. So my challenges are just how to figure out how to learn with them.
I'm going to take a slightly different twist on that since we've had a lot of good answers here, but the things that they will teach you about yourself. And I think that's one of the other big fears that parents have is, I don't think I could spend that much time with my children. And the reality is that can be hard, being with your kids 24/7. And you think about, what does sin ultimately do? It breaks relationship. And so there's something about our fallenness that does want to sort of separate from our children and to stick them in an institution for long periods of time. And it can be hard to come back together. But that's one of the best things about homeschooling is the sanctification that goes on in the life of a parent as they are engaging in this process of relationship with their children.
I would say ditto to everything that these folks have said. I think seeing the relationship with God, seeing their heart, and seeing that intimate walk with Christ that has flourished. And the sanctification as a parent, for sure, what they teach you is phenomenal. And just to see them grow spiritually, it's amazing to have that foundation in Christ, and how Sarah was saying, God and Christ are at the center of what they do. And that's so opposite of the world.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a follow-up, and we'll just reverse course back down that way. So in specifically thinking about your children, what's something that you learned about one of your children that you don't think you would have learned otherwise? If they were going to school every day and you got to harass them and homework, come on, bed, eat, go, blah, blah, blah. What's something just amazing, some skill or interest or something that you wouldn't have known about your child you don't think otherwise? And you don't have to do all of your kids, Steve. You can just pick one. But something unique that you learned about your children because you're homeschooling.
I can't think offhand of one thing. I've just learned how differently they are. I've learned that they're their own people, and they're not little mini Peters and Elizabeths. To see who they are and how God created them, that they have such a phenomenal purpose and what God's going to do in them.
Come on, you could do better than that.
Okay, you answer it.
That's
It's your
lame.
children too.
Okay, well, our son, I'll give you an example of our son. So when we first started homeschooling, and Elizabeth relayed to you, okay, just take some time out of school and just reset and get ready to homeschool. So, just read to him, do these sorts of things. So he would sit on the floor, and Elizabeth would be reading to him, or I would, or whatever, and he would have his Matchbox cars, and he'd be doing all this stuff, or he'd have action figures and doing stuff, and you're like, I'm just sitting here reading, wasting my time. Boy, are you even paying attention? But you know what? found out that you could ask him a question about anything that you were reading, and he could pop right up and answer that question. And he'd be like, no, it's the square root of 12, whatever it was. We weren't quite that advanced. He was just in 4th grade when we started. But, and to teach him math. So our daughter could sit down and she'd crank through the math. Our son, we got to teaching angles. And so had him go out in the yard and put on his degrees, yeah. Not angles, but degrees. Well, they're related, but put on his snowboard. Okay, do a 90 degree. Zhoop, do a 180. Zhoop, and made him jump around and do all that. So for him, that was the way that he was learning. So it was just really cool to see how to engage with him. But when he was in school, he was in trouble all the time because he wouldn't sit still. And I'm just going to say this out here, ADD, ADHD, there are a few cases where people actually have that, but most of the time it's just boy. It's DNA that makes you ADD. And if your DNA is boy, then you're not going to sit still. Boys aren't meant to sit still. The girls can sit at a desk and learn and pay attention and focus. Boys need to be doing something, making some noise. And in school, that was a challenge all the time. Your son won't sit still. So, and fortunately, for a period of time, we had a teacher that got him the big bouncy ball and got him a band that he could kick and do things to try to help. But those are all sorts of things. You can't go out in the driveway and do math in chalk on the driveway and the sidewalk in school. It just doesn't happen that way. So those are some of the cool things. All right, Steve.
Yeah, Carson just realized that he has a huge past to be fidgety and do all kinds of stuff because he's a boy. So
I got your back, man.
I think how quickly the children can learn. When you see, you're programmed if you have your kids in school that, school kind of takes all day. And then you start homeschooling and you realize, wow, so much can happen in like an hour or less, And so, but back to sort of a unique thing about children that you learn. I think one of the beautiful things is the development of relationship that you start to establish at an early age, and the trust that you start to establish with your children and the fruits of that. And one of the fruits of that that's been sweet in our home is lots of wonderful times, conversations, but even the confession of sin to us. And our children coming to us because they trust us and they know we love them and are willing to say, I did this, God's Spirit is working on them. And we're knowing, you said unique things that you know about them. You probably didn't expect this response, but their sins at a deeper level that they're telling us. And so they're not, isolated from us for hours at a day where they're afraid to tell us about all the stuff that's happening in their world, and they don't think mom and dad could ever know that or love them if they knew that. They're coming to us and saying, I did this. And so you learn things about your children. Sometimes it's the wonderful gifts and talents that God has given them and the things that are amazing, which they all have. And sometimes it's their sins that they will come and tell you because you have that relationship with them.
I would say I learned their passions the most. I would not have known that my daughter loves helping other kids if we were not there. So there's been times where we've got together with other homeschool families and she's helped teach someone to read, and now, like I said, she serves in the nursery for teacher tots at High Country. And I don't think I would see that passion if we didn't take the time to homeschool and to get to do life with other families and together. And then for my son, it's also his passion. He has a great passion for standing up for everybody's liberties. And he tells me the other morning, I'm going to be president one day, and we're going to sit down and have coffee in the morning agenda. And I'm thinking, I hope you are, because he would change this world. So whether somebody's got hurt on the playground or someone's struggling with something, he will notify me, and we will come alongside and help where we can. And so their passion of serving in different areas, but it's amazing to watch them just come alive and get to live out what God has for them.
I would not have known how wildly overwhelmed my son was in public school for kindergarten, first and second grade. He was just a quiet kid. really quiet. All of our parent-teacher conferences, like, he's a sweet boy. He's just really quiet. He just sits in that same place every day. And if you call on him, he'll be like, oh, Mrs. Roberts, I really like your hair today. I really like your dress. And she'd be like, oh, thanks, you're sweet, and then move on. And he wasn't learning. He was just trying to stay out of the line, out of the eyes, eyesight of the teacher. He's a wonderful kid, a huge personality. And I think that setting was crushing him. And I wouldn't have known that until he was at home with me and could share and express and build his Legos and kick them down in race cars and, catapults. And then my daughter, her mind is wired in ways that mine's not. And she was able to link mathematics and music in a way that blessed her skills at the piano. And she is a self-taught piano player because she learned the grammar of it. She wrestled with the music theory and the circle of fifths, and then is applying it to these really beautiful pieces of music. And she's doing it, linking it with her math. And if she was away from me in orchestra and math classes, how was your day? What did you learn? Nothing. It was fine. I had whatever lunch, so-and-so was mean to me. And to be able to hear her in the living room practice and hear her, oh, I get it, the circle of fifths, it's math. What? It's a joy. It was a total joy to be with her to discover that. And in Latin, she learned that peninsula is Latin for almost island. And there was great rejoicing over that, too.
Now I have all sorts of stories, having heard all of your answers. I think the one, and I'll actually go back before we had children, and before I was even married, I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was a teacher there and got to go to a gym and was just interacting with some high school students there, and noticed that there was one that she easily could carry on conversations with adults, and learned she was homeschooling, and it was like, tick, And part of the socialization that we laugh about at our family is because we interact at our church with toddlers. We also have a sweet relationship with two ladies that are in their 90s. And so it is amazing to watch often homeschooled children can interact with adults and want to. In fact, my children have often said, when they were a little bit younger, so they would come sidle up and want to be in on the adults' conversation because their stories were much more fun, they were much more entertaining, there was much more information that they were gathering and learning about it. Sometimes I'd had to shoo them away because it was like not quite appropriate conversation for youngsters to hear at that point, but they delighted in being able to do that. And it's interesting now to watch. One of my daughters serves at an Awana group and is with little 3- and 4-year-olds, and she just makes it a really point to get down on their level and to share life with them each time. And so it's very neat to see that. It's also amazing to watch, like was shared earlier, their hearts for others really blossoms. And one of them that was, Steve mentioned too, is regarding family and parents. One of my daughters was in a youth group, and a conversation began bashing parents within this smaller group of people. And she noted that 3 people in it that weren't talking badly about their parents were all homeschoolers. And she was like, Mom, like we all have relationships with our parents. And her part, when she came away, was saddened that these other people didn't have a relationship with their parents that they had.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Round of applause for our presenters tonight. Thank you all very much. So I'm going to ask you folks to stay here with me for just a minute. I'm going to excuse you guys and ask you to head out to your tables so that we can dismiss folks out to come catch up with you. And there are other folks out there as well, so thank you guys again. So just in wrapping up, thank you guys for being here. Hope this has given you some information and encouragement to go out. I want to circle back while they're going out. Hillsdale College, Pensacola Christian College, a lot of those colleges that were listed up there that don't take federal money, they are actively looking for homeschoolers. And many colleges, even Harvard and other places, are actively pursuing homeschoolers because they understand that homeschoolers have discipline, they have the ability to help themselves learn, they're not coming out of a system of public school. So there is a very high demand for homeschoolers. And so keep that in mind. But I wanted to mention Hillsdale, I know Pensacola Christian College, they sent us information, so there's a bunch of that out there. They have opportunities to go spend the weekend. I know our son went to Pensacola. And it was interesting. Here's one of those things you learn about your son. We went down there for the open house weekend, and you got to go sit in different classes. And so we had like 7 or 8 classes picked out that we were going to go to over the course of the couple days. And we went to the very first class, which was a criminal justice class. And we sat in there and we're like, okay, we gotta leave this class halfway through, go to the other one, No, I want to stay. Okay. All right, we got to go to this other marketing class. No, I want to do another criminal justice class. Well, fast forward, our son graduated college last year with a criminal justice degree and just got accepted to go to the police academy here in Colorado Springs. So would have had no idea had we not gone to that, taken advantage of the opportunity to go visit the college. So I want to encourage you guys to do that as well. And I just want to leave you with one of the APOTA moments for our family, which I hope every family gets to have. So we mentioned that High Country, we used to start the week after Labor Day. So during that last week of August, when everybody else was back in school, we took a road trip to South Dakota, and we went up and saw Mount Rushmore and went to Custer State Park, and we found this house that, if you want to learn science, the floor is flat, but all the walls are built sideways, so when you're walking, you feel like you're falling over, and it just all this weird science stuff they taught us. But we just had a fantastic time. The entire time we had our kids were learning, and they didn't even understand that. We were just up there having a grand old time. They thought we were on vacation, and in the car on the way back, we're like, okay, now you guys need to write a paper about the history of Mount Rushmore and how did that come. And, nothing spectacular, but we want a page on that. We want a page on Crazy Horse. We want a page on what we saw at Custer State Park. And so we turned that week, not only was it a vacation, we had a great time, but when we got back, we had time and work for them to do. But that's one of our best family memories. So homeschooling has so much to offer you guys. I just want to encourage you in that way. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. Appreciate you all joining us here this evening in person. Those of you that joined us on the live stream, hope we got this for you. This will be recorded, so you can refer back to it. Please do that. And thank you all very much. Be blessed.